How many times have you trusted a doctor without looking at your own scans? Helen was sure everything was fine until reality flipped her world upside down. Helen woke up at 5:50 before her alarm. Outside, the rain was playing its own gray symphony. In her small kitchen, filled with the scent of coffee and apples, Helen prepared oatmeal, her trademark dish, which her daughter Maggie considered the worst of all her mother's experiments. Still, Helen believed, a day had to start right, even if the whole family thought her nutritional advice was some kind of secret torture. "Eat it, you'll be smarter." "I'm your mother, I can't be wrong," she joked, scooping oatmeal into a bowl. "Would have been better if you were wrong with this recipe," Maggie muttered, but as usual obeyed. Helen hugged her husband Jerry goodbye firm, a little longer than usual, as if that embrace could create a safety cushion for the whole day. Today she was scheduled for a simple laparoscopic surgery, nothing serious, but her hands still shook. The hospital greeted her with the scent of bleach, a bored receptionist, and endless forms. "There's less paperwork to fix a tooth," Helen quipped as she signed form after form. A young nurse nodded automatic. "Sign here. Date here. This copy is for you." Helen glanced at the surgeon, tall, mid-40s, tired eyes, perfectly styled hair. "All routine. Are you nervous?" "Only if you mix up my organs," Helen shot back. He smirked. "No creativity today." The surgery went quickly. When Helen woke, she felt less like a patient and more like a movie extra, nurses hustling, someone rearranging pillows, ambulances wailing outside. "Everything went great," the surgeon declared cheerfully. "Your tests look good, no complications. Home in a couple of days." Helen smiled in relief. If anything was scary, it was the hospital food and the drip beeping at night. Her roommate was a 70-year-old lady, Mrs. Grayson, who wept quietly at night and by day told stories about her genius grandchildren. "Main thing is, make sure they let you out without any extra holes," she snickered, wrapping up in a shawl. "I've got nowhere left for more holes, Mrs. Grayson," Helen grinned. "That's what you think." On the third day, the doctor handed Helen her discharge papers. "All clear, you're young and healthy. If you need anything, come for a checkup." Helen felt a rush of pride. One more hurdle cleared, another checkmark in her long list of things handled, where she was captain of her own life. But a tiny doubt lingered inside, like a fingernail on glass. What if? No, impossible. Everyone leaves the hospital like this. She tossed the thought out like an expired coupon. At home, chaos reigned. Maggie tried to rescue a burnt pizza. Jerry cursed at the coffee machine. The mailbox overflowed with junk. All was normal. "Mom, are you going to control my dinner again?" "Even if I'm in a cast, always." The first 2 weeks passed in routine. Helen jumped back into work, dinners, arguing with Jerry about who should pay the bills. But one night, she felt a strange heaviness in her side. Not pain. More like someone had left a small stone inside her. Probably just recovery pains, she told herself. "You're overdoing it, Helen. Give it a few days, it'll pass." But a few days stretched into 2 weeks. It got more frequent. Sometimes at night, it felt like something foreign was moving in her abdomen. "You're just tired. You need to slow down," Jerry said, not looking up from sports news. "If only you could give birth once, just to know the difference between tired and anxious," Helen retorted. She booked an X-ray, just to calm her nerves. The doctor clicked the mouse, glanced at the screen, and declared, "All clear. Nothing to worry about." Helen squinted at the screen. "What's that white shadow?" "Artifact." "Happens." "You're fine." She knew doctors hated when patients asked too many questions. "An artifact, huh? Amazing how many artifacts we all have. Maybe they add frequent flyer miles for those." The doctor forced a smile and nodded toward the door. That evening, as the family got ready for dinner, Helen realized this time her anxiety wasn't going to fade on its own. "I wonder how many people die from artifacts before anyone admits a mistake?" There was no answer. She had no idea just how far this feeling would take her, or how dangerous someone else's indifference could be. What happened next changed everything. You don't want to miss how this unravels. When the truth is too terrifying to believe, who dares take the first step? Helen thought the worst was behind her. She was wrong. That night, Helen barely slept. Her abdomen ached, a dull, heavy sensation under her right rib, not pain, but like someone had dropped a souvenir inside. She dreamt she was walking down a long corridor, doors on either side, peered at by surgeons in masks. Each one held something: scalpels, scissors, even coffee mugs. One mask suddenly whispered, "Are you sure it's all clear?" Waking up, Helen felt true fear for the first time in years. Not of pain, but of knowing that if she didn't search for answers, no one else would. "I'm the captain, remember?" she muttered at her reflection. Frown lines, dark circles, hair like a shipwreck. At work, she tried to lose herself in routine, but even her sharp comments and the jealous glances from new hires, "How do you do it all?" didn't help. She counted down the minutes until the end of the day. Home that evening, Helen opened her laptop and searched, "How long do post-laparoscopy pains last?" The answers were mixed. Some said weeks, others months, some suggested just waiting it out. "Maybe I really am making a mountain out of a molehill, like my mom used to say," she grumbled aloud, remembering Maggie's sarcastic jabs. "But with this mole, looks like I'll live to old age." A few days later, the pain sharpened. When she picked up a bag of groceries, it pulled at her side. "That's it. I'll solve this mystery myself." She booked an appointment at a private clinic. The technician, all business, handed her a CD of images and told her to see a therapist. But Helen decided to play doctor herself. At home, she opened the scans. Her heart dropped. The second image, an elongated white shape, like a nail or hairpin. "Hello, artifact," she laughed nervously. In the third image, the same object, this time clearly visible, flat, metallic, almost perfectly straight. Or are you my surgeon's forgotten memory from a bad shift? Her husband came into the kitchen. "What are you watching?" "A movie. A horror film. Starring your wife. Are you dramatizing again?" "This time, I think I'm not alone." Knowing anxiety alone wouldn't solve it, Helen booked an appointment with a new surgeon. The young doctor studied the images and frowned. "You had surgery a month ago? That's a medical instrument. It needs to come out now." For the first time, Helen heard the word danger, not from herself, but from a man in a white coat. She felt fear and a flash of vindication. "Well, Jerry, it's not always all in my head." At home, her husband didn't believe it. "It's a mistake. Doctors can't be that careless. Maybe it's not even your scan." "Then let's check whose abdomen I have now." That night, in the dark, she lay awake feeling the cold, heavy lump inside. In this world, it's easier to believe your wife is crazy than that a doctor left a scalpel in her. Maybe that's really easier? But I'm picking the second option. This time, I'll get to the truth, even if it's scarier than I imagined. This is only the beginning. Next comes the confrontation. Everything you've been waiting for right here. Stay to see how Helen stands up to them all. What if the system not only made a mistake, but chose to cover it up? Helen was ready to fight, but never expected who'd stand in her way first. Her phone buzzed all morning. "When are you coming to work?" "We're swapped." "Mom, will you buy me those sneakers?" "Helen, this is the clinic. We've booked your consultation." She went on autopilot, gathered documents, fresh test results, everything from her previous surgery. In her mind, a silent timer ticked. What if they start denying the obvious? Or just lose the scans? The young surgeon was polite but cautious. "We'll need an ultrasound. Maybe a CT. Cases like this are very rare." "Rare or just never admitted?" Helen cut in. "My only concern is your health. The rest is paperwork." The tests confirmed the worst, a surgical tool, plain as day, in her abdominal cavity. "It appears to be a scalpel left from your surgery." "Appears? Is that how you salt your soup?" The doctor blushed, promised to file everything, and called the department head. From there, Helen was trapped in bureaucratic hell. "We need a committee report. We can't accuse a colleague without a court ruling. Maybe you misunderstood. Please see our psychologist." At home, Jerry tried to support her in his way. "Suing the hospital? Are you sure? They've got armies of lawyers." And I've got a foreign object and a few sharp words. Maggie, in contrast, was excited. Mom, you're like a superhero now, just without a cape. Maybe you'll be on TV? And don't tell Grandma, she'll think I'm just acting out. At dinner, they debated whether to make a fuss. This is our town, everyone knows everyone. Well, I know everyone too, but what's inside me isn't their problem, it's someone's mistake. The anger grew. She was scared, but more scared that someone else might trust a doctor's word and never get a second chance at the truth. It only gets tougher from here. Helen doesn't yet know who she's up against. You won't want to miss what's next. How do you win when your enemy is invisible and wears a white coat? Helen counted on justice, but betrayal came from where she least expected. Helen walked down the hospital corridor feeling like a contestant on a reality show where the prize was survival. At the next meeting, doctors looked at her as if she were just an inconvenient statistic. These things happen. Probably a manufacturing defect. Maybe it's a leftover from a previous procedure? Sorry, but I'm not a pickle jar, you can't just leave things in me. It seemed the hospital wanted to drown her in paperwork. Let's wait for the results of the internal investigation. No comments until the committee rules. At home, tension grew. Jerry grew irritable. How long is this going to go on? I thought you wanted to move on, not sue. You can forget. I can't. Or do you want me to forget that someone left something inside me? Maggie ran off to a friend's. I don't want to be laughed at in school. Please, Mom, be careful. That evening, the phone rang. It was the surgeon. His voice was cold, tinged with exhaustion and irritation. You imagine this? Impossible. I followed every protocol. Then let your protocols remove the scalpel from me. He hung up. Helen thought for the first time. Maybe everyone just wants to forget, keep their reputation. Who in this town will treat my family after this? She felt betrayed by the hospital, by her family, even by her daughter. But her anger was stronger than her pain. It's either I tell this story or it will be told about me. Who will crack first, the system or Helen? The next chapter will set things straight. Don't miss it. Justice is never a gift. It costs pain, sleepless nights, and cold rage. Helen is ready to go all the way, but the price may be higher than she imagined. Collecting documents proved harder than she'd thought. Some tests were lost, the X-ray was suddenly unreadable, staff refused to sign paperwork. We're being told to stay quiet, sorry. Helen filed a complaint with the health department, enlisted a lawyer she knew from school meetings. Prepare for a long battle. They'll deny everything. Fudge records, make paperwork disappear. What if I call the press? Get ready, they'll try to drag your name through the mud. Meanwhile, the pain grew sharper. Doctors dodged her questions, prescribed pills. It might be psychosomatic. You're just nervous, try yoga. Jerry started sleeping in another room. You've turned our home into a courtroom. I'm exhausted. One night, Helen broke down. What if this happened to Maggie, would you brush it off? I just want you to be like you used to. She sobbed. I'll never be like I used to. That night, for the first time, she allowed herself to feel fear, not for herself, but for her daughter, and for the fact that justice in their town was only for the right people. She was now an outsider. An unexpected revelation is coming, nobody will see it coming. The climax is near. You need to see how it ends. What if justice is deaf and your family is blind? Helen was on the brink of despair, until an unexpected ally changed everything. The next day, Mrs. Grayson, the woman from the hospital, came to visit. I heard your story. You're not alone. They treated me like that too. But you stayed silent. I was scared. Don't be. Then a local newspaper journalist rang the bell. I heard what happened. Can we talk? Helen decided. Write it all down. I'm tired of being a shadow in my own home. The next day, the article hit the stands with a headline. Doctors forget their patients from the inside. Comments and calls poured in. Some supported her, some accused her of lying, some said, don't air your dirty laundry. Jerry was furious. Now everyone will know. You want Maggie to suffer at school. For the first time in a long time, Maggie hugged her mom. I don't care what people say. I just want you alive. Those words were like a shot of courage for Helen. If I'm going to fight, I'm going all the way. A new chapter in the battle. The truth is closer, but the price keeps rising. Don't miss the climax. When fear is gone, only anger remains. Helen is done being quiet. Now it's their turn to be scared. Helen's story spread through town faster than a cold and flu season. Acquaintances messaged her, some with encouragement, some with sly warnings to avoid trouble. At the grocery store, a stranger approached her, gripping her purse tightly. You're brave not to stay silent. They almost killed me too. I didn't dare speak up. Thank you for saying that, Helen replied, and for the first time in ages her smile was real. The hospital panicked, an urgent internal review was announced. The surgeon was quietly suspended, but officially it was just routine recertification. Doctors stopped smiling at her in the hallway. Haven't you had enough? Snapped a former hospital roommate. And you're fine being another mistake on their conveyor belt? Helen shot back, though even she felt unsettled. That evening, the surgeon himself came to her house, bringing a hospital lawyer and a well-dressed mediator. Let's handle this quietly. We have a reputation, you have a family. We'll compensate you if you agree not to sue, the mediator said, avoiding eye contact. Will you quietly take out the scalpel too so nobody finds out? The lawyer tensed. Unproven accusations could be considered slander. At that moment, Maggie walked in tired but determined. She sat beside her mother and put her hand on Helen's shoulder. We're not making any deals. My mom's right. I'm proud of her, Maggie said, her voice firm. Jerry looked at his wife with worry. Are you sure you want this fight? It could cost us everything. You always feared conflict, Jerry. But sometimes war is better than silence, Helen replied, not hiding her bitterness. A week later, Helen had another operation, this time with independent oversight and everything on camera. Afterward, they laid the scalpel in front of her. Hard to believe this piece of metal was inside me, she said, examining the dark spots on its handle. Maybe now it'll bring you luck, one doctor joked. Luck against trusting too much, Helen replied, dark humor at last returning to her voice. The first face she saw after anesthesia was Maggie's. You're not just my mom, you're a fighter. You won. And for the first time in half a year, Helen cried from relief. The battle for the truth is almost over. But what will the ending bring? Don't miss the final twists. When fear is gone, only anger remains. Helen is done staying silent. Now it's their turn to be scared. The article about Helen spread through the city faster than the flu in a crowded bus. Acquaintances sent her messages, some with encouragement, others with sly advice to stay away from those kinds of stories. At the store, a stranger approached her, gripping her purse tightly as if she might use it as a weapon. You're brave not to stay silent. They treated me too, I barely survived. I didn't dare speak up back then. Thank you for telling me, Helen replied, and for the first time in a long time, her smile was sincere. The hospital scrambled, an emergency internal investigation was launched. Rumor had it the surgeon had been temporarily suspended from operating, but officially it was routine certification. Doctors suddenly stopped smiling at her in the hallway. Haven't you had enough? A former roommate from the hospital snapped. And you're fine being just another mistake on their conveyor belt? Helen shot back, but even she felt unsettled. That same evening, the surgeon himself came to her house, not alone, but with a hospital lawyer and a man in an expensive coat who introduced himself as a mediator. Let's settle this quietly. We have a reputation to protect, and you have a family. We'll offer compensation if you agree not to sue, the mediator said, avoiding eye contact. Will you quietly take out the scalpel too so nobody finds out? The lawyer tensed. Such accusations could be considered slander if you can't prove them. At that moment, Maggie walked into the room, tired but determined. She sat next to her mother and put her hand on Helen's shoulder. We're not making any deals. Mom's right. I'm proud of her, Maggie said, her voice steady and bold. Helen's husband Jerry looked at his wife with worry. Are you sure you want this fight? This could cost us our peace, our friends. You always feared conflict, Jerry. But sometimes war is better than silence, she replied, her bitterness no longer hidden. A week later, Helen had the second surgery, under the supervision of an independent commission, everything on video. Afterward, they placed the scalpel right in front of her. Hard to believe this piece of metal was inside me, she said, examining the dark stains on its handle. Maybe now it'll bring you luck, one of the doctors joked awkwardly. Luck against trusting too much, maybe, Helen shot back. Black humor had finally returned to her voice. The first face she saw after anesthesia was Maggie's. You're not just my mom, you're a warrior. You won. And for the first time in half a year, Helen cried from relief. The battle for the truth is almost over. But what will the ending bring? Don't miss the final twists. When the truth becomes public, everyone has to pick a side. Helen faced not just the system, but her own family. After the surgery, Helen's whole life turned upside down. She became a local celebrity, just not the kind she'd ever dreamed of being. The newspapers printed headlines like, "Scalpel Inside," "Revenge or Negligence." Social media lit up. Some admired her courage, others whispered she just wanted money, and some claimed she brought it on herself. Her family life hit another breaking point. Jerry moved in with his sister, just to get away from the chaos for a bit. "I need some space. Don't be upset." "Too late, dear. Taking offense is my new profession," Helen quipped, not calling him again. Maggie came home from school in tears. "They're saying you just want to get rich in court. Nobody cares what you've been through. Sometimes people will hate you just because they're not brave enough to do what you did," Helen replied, hugging her daughter tight. For the first time in a long while, Maggie didn't pull away. She held on even tighter. Helen started corresponding with dozens of people who wrote about their own pain and fears. She answered every message, knowing, as long as the system stays silent, someone needs to speak up. The hospital officially admitted fault. "Those responsible will be disciplined. We'll offer compensation if you agree not to take this further." But Helen refused. "I'm not selling my silence. The price is the truth." And she filed a lawsuit. There was no turning back now. The trial is on the horizon, the last ordeal. Will Helen finally find justice? The finale is close. Stay with us. When the fight is over, only scars remain. But scars are medals for truth. Helen is ready for the final round. The trial turned out to be far scarier than the surgery itself. The hospital's lawyers used every argument. She signed the consent for surgery herself. All the documentation is in order, it could be a forgery. She waited too long to come forward. Maybe it's all in her head. Helen held her ground in the courtroom, though she was shaking inside. Her lawyer fought for every detail. Here's the medical report, an independent commission, x-rays, expert testimony. The scalpel was surgically removed and identified. At the final hearing, Jerry walked into the courtroom, looking older and more worn. "I was a fool not to believe you. I was afraid of losing my wife, and now I realize I almost lost you for good." "I'm sorry," he said quietly, eyes averted. Maggie sat in the front row, squeezing her mother's hand. For a moment, Helen felt pride through tears. When the judge read the verdict, the room held its breath. The court finds that a violation of medical protocol occurred. The hospital must pay compensation, implement internal reforms, and formally apologize to the plaintiff. Helen didn't feel triumphant. She just exhaled, exhausted. Finally. But the real reward wasn't the money or even the formal apologies, it was the outpouring of support from ordinary people after the verdict. One last chapter remains, a farewell to the past and a new beginning. How does life go on after all this? Can you trust the world again after it nearly destroyed you? Helen learned to live anew. But the greatest victory is inside herself. A month after the trial, Helen's house once again smelled of apples and oatmeal. Jerry, grayer and a bit changed, asked gently, "Can you forgive me?" "I forgave you long ago. I just need time and space for myself," Helen replied, without any bitterness. Maggie laughed in the kitchen. "Mom, you're basically an internet star now. More followers than the school principal." "See? Artifacts bring people together," Helen joked. On the shelf, under a glass dome, sat the very scalpel. For Helen, it wasn't a reminder of pain, but of the fact that silence can be worse than scandal. In letters and messages, people thanked her. "Because of you, I took my case to court too. I'm not ashamed of my scars anymore. Thank you for speaking out." In the evenings, Helen recorded other people's stories for her blog, for herself, for future Maggie. She no longer felt fear, just irony, a bit of weariness, and a lot of human warmth. She looked at herself in the mirror and, for the first time in many months, didn't look away. "I'm not a hero. I just got tired of being a victim. And that's enough." The world was still imperfect, sometimes cruel. But now Helen had the most important thing, experience, and the right not to stay silent. And that meant everything.